The Warriors are lost. They have no present, no future, and no direction. They talk publicly about how important it is for them to compete with Steph while they still can, about trying to add pieces and make moves, yet here they are, still near the bottom of the West standings. And the question is, at what point does this become too much for Steph to handle in Golden State, wasting away the last few years of his career on a team with zero chance to win a title? Now, we all know that the concept of Steph Curry getting traded away from the Warriors, requesting a trade from the Warriors, is very unlikely, but the situation is getting so bad that they're actually making it a possibility. Since the Warriors won the title in 2022, they have won one playoff series. They made the second round the year after they won the title. That is it. And they've changed the roster a bunch. They traded away Jordan Poole. They added CP3 in the same trade. They extended Draymond Green. They let Clay go this past offseason. They added some under-the-radar free agent guys like Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson, and others in free agency. They added Dennis Schroeder in the middle of the year. And at the beginning of this season, it looked like the Warriors had found their formula. They added spacing and depth and perimeter players around Steph. They played Steph less minutes than they ever had before. They relied on Steph less than they ever had before. And they had this collective vision for their team that was all centered around shooting, depth, and veterans. And then it all fell apart, and they have not been even remotely close to a good team after the first couple weeks of the year. And quite frankly, the Warriors are the definition of mediocrity in the NBA right now, and that is exactly where you do not want to be. They only owe one future first-round pick, so at least they have that going for them, but there's no real upside on the roster. The whole two-timeline thing that they tried to do with Steph just hasn't worked with the future of the team. Yes, they won the title in 2022, but missing on someone like James Wiseman and the lack of development from guys like Podziemski this year, Kuminga over the last couple of years, have left them in a situation where they don't have a bright future and they're not competing in the meantime, which means that this is decision time right now for Golden State. I don't foresee an avenue where Golden State can just go through the year, not make changes to this roster, and just go past the trade deadline, go into the playoffs with the group that they have now, and realistically say that they are still trying to compete for titles while Steph is there. Here's what I mean when I say it is decision time. Jonathan Kuminga is a restricted free agent this offseason. He is not under contract with the team next year, and he's been wanting an extension for a while. They've passed up multiple deadlines to give him an extension, and quite frankly, they've tried to trade him for like 2 years. They haven't been able to make a deal that they like, but they've tried to get Paul George using him. They've tried to get Lauri Markkanen using him, a bunch of other guys as well. A bunch of teams around the league have gauged their interest in Jonathan Kuminga, and as of right now, he's still with the Warriors, which means they have to pay him. Steph and Draymond are both under contract for the next 2 seasons after this one, and Wiggins can opt out in a year. But realistically, where is this team going if it's Curry, Draymond, Wiggins, Kuminga, and Podziemski for the next 2 years? They're going exactly where they have been so far this season, a 500 team in a loaded Western Conference with zero chance to win a title. Which means that one of two things needs to happen for the Warriors. They either need to accept the reality of the situation, have a real conversation with Steph about what he wants the rest of his career to look like, because it's unlikely they're going to be able to build a championship contender around him over the next couple of years. If he is okay staying in Golden State and playing on a team that doesn't really have a chance to win a title, then yeah, you keep him. But if you have that conversation with him and he says, I'd really like to go and win, and you don't have the ability to do that, then some tough decisions need to be made. Now, realistically, they're going to go with the other option, which is continue to explore adding pieces at the deadline. We know that the Jimmy Butler rumors are out there. I'm actually really surprised that Golden State isn't more involved in that, given that they're the only real path here to win a title is to go pretty much all in anyway, which of course you would be doing by trading for and then paying Jimmy Butler. But if it isn't Butler, who are they getting? Who are they getting that actually changes the future of this team or changes where they finish in the Western Conference this season? They added Dennis Schroeder. Cam Johnson is certainly an option for them. Maybe there's a Zach LaVine trade for them out there. But right now, if it's not Jimmy Butler, which it doesn't seem like it is, they're kind of out of options in terms of really drastically improving the roster this season. And this is why in the offseason, they went so aggressively after guys like Lauri Markkanen and guys like Jimmy Butler, because of the exact situation that they now find themselves in. And this is a really difficult situation for the Warriors because the right basketball move, when you look at the roster, is to trade away Steph and trade away Draymond, trade away Wiggins, whoever you can to try and get stuff, because they have almost all of their future picks. They can be bad, they can draft, and then in a couple of years, they'll be really good again. And I'm sure there's a ton of teams that if Steph Curry was suddenly available, would be willing to give up a bunch of stuff to add Steph to their roster. I think Draymond still has potential trade value as well, and that's the correct basketball decision. But there's so many emotions tied to this. The fact that Steph could be one of the very few guys these days that actually plays their entire career with just one team. The fact that they continually have tried to build around him, and they got the 2022 title when not that long before the 2022 title, they were in a very similar situation to where they are right now. And there's just a lot to deal with there when it comes to juggling the right basketball decision and what feels like the sentimental decision for Steph. But we've already kind of seen that erode for them a little bit when they let Klay Thompson go. Now, granted, Klay Thompson does not mean to the Warriors what Steph Curry does, and obviously there were some hurt feelings there by the time it was time for Klay to leave, but they have already shown a willingness to move away from this unbelievably successful core that they've had over the last couple of seasons by having Klay walk, and then obviously they traded away someone like Jordan Poole as well. But obviously, then making the decision to trade Steph Curry is on a completely different level. And really, this just comes down to Steph's level of frustration. It has been more clear than ever this season that he's not okay with the way things are going. He's not okay with the losing. He's not okay with knowing in his heart that they don't have a chance to win a title, because he knows, and he said publicly, that his basketball journey is coming to an end here pretty soon. And he knows that every time he goes out there with a team that doesn't have a real chance to beat some of the best teams in the league, he's kind of just wasting his time. This is a guy that ever since this team broke out in 2015, they've been competing every year that he's been healthy, pretty much, with the exception of a couple of the years after Durant left. This is someone that is extremely used to winning, and if the organization can no longer provide that, it really just comes down to how much he's willing to make noise at the risk of his long-term legacy, what he means within the history of the game, what he means to the Warriors, how much he wants to maybe mess with that relationship with the Warriors, how much it means to him to actually stay and work things out there, or potentially go somewhere else where maybe he can compete at a higher level. But beyond his frustration, beyond everything with Golden State, the sentimentality of everything, it comes down to the roster. This is a roster that has just not been built well enough over the last couple of seasons to sustain this era of Steph Curry's basketball career. Like, they had Klay, obviously they had Durant, they had arguably the best NBA team of all time when they had KD on the team. And then after that, they've tried. They added D'Lo to keep the salary spot open from when they lost KD. They obviously were able to win the title in 2022. But the whole point of the two timeline thing was James Wiseman and Jonathan Kuminga and Brandon Pajemski. These guys were going to, Moses Moody, these were going to be the guys that pushed them forward into the future. One of them was going to break out, be the star alongside Steph, and the torch would be passed, like Kawhi in San Antonio when that dynasty ended. And missing on Wiseman the way that they did certainly hurts, especially with LaMelo getting picked right after. The opportunity to maybe move up to 1 and take Anthony Edwards in that draft, which we talked about in the past on this channel. And then Kuminga, who's good and valuable, but has just never developed into the kind of guy that they really wanted. That really is the failure of all this. And if it ultimately ends with Steph no longer being a Golden State Warrior, the failing of all this is how the front office has built the team to sustain Steph aging and some of the other guys aging and adding more key pieces. And their inability to do that, whether that be via trade when they tried to go out and get stars, or their inability to develop their young players like Pajemski and Kuminga and Wiseman, ultimately, I hope it doesn't end in Steph getting traded. I hope he finishes his career with the Warriors, but it's getting more questionable by the day this season.